Things that I'll do to keep loneliness at bay is do the things that I love, the things that bring me joy. They might not involve other people, but they'll still bring me joy and they'll still bring me happiness that will potentially override any loneliness that I feel. I often find that I will feel lonely if we haven't been outside for a few days. But this time of year, it's rained for a bazillion weeks at this point, and we haven't been out as much. But we've also been content in that, in the main. But just getting out when I feel lonely might be hard to do, but it's definitely something that makes me feel better, fills my cup, and allows me to think again about, am I really lonely, or am I just missing something? I think for me it would be difficult to get the social interaction that I need through a group. I like to listen and I like to be heard, and I don't think you can do that in a big group. I think loneliness is something that we can lean into. Instead of seeing it as loneliness, we can see it as an opportunity to grow and develop and understand why we might feel lonely, and try and make changes so that's not the case. If there is geographical, you think it's the reason is geographically the reason why you feel lonely, then potentially that's something that needs to change. But for me, it's definitely not been a geographical thing. It's more of a seasonal thing. I do remember feeling pretty similar in these months of the year, of the seasons, feeling pretty similar. But whether I feel lonely just as a whole because of where I live geographically in the far north of Scotland, no, I don't. I think I feel less lonely than I ever have done, which is ironic considering the population up here is very, very small compared to the rest of the UK. So yeah, maybe it's because my heart feels so full here. I don't need as much as I think I did down south to keep me from feeling lonely. And again, I don't think it's people. I think it's fulfillment and how you feel. I think loneliness can come from insecurity or feeling inadequate. And then you feel lonely because you feel like you're the only person that feels a certain way, thinks a certain way, and that's not to do with geographically or whether there's lots of people around you physically. You need people around you spiritually and emotionally, and you can be surrounded by lots of people and not have any of that, and that can feel lonely. There are definitely times where I feel lonely, not in a sad way as such. I have a large family, there's 6 of us, so there's always people around. However, this time of year, with the weather conditions being so remote and obviously less people, it does mean that things are a little bit harder to find that social connection. And when you do find that social connection, this time of year, we have the issue of adverse weather. We were snowed in beginning of this year for 8 days. So things naturally slow down when you live rurally. There's not much you can do about the adverse weather. People get poorly. So a lot of groups that we attend are attendance based. So if there's not enough people, then it can't go ahead. And obviously this is the time of year that everybody gets sick. So we could have back-to-back families poorly. We can be poorly, and it just ends up being a bit of a domino effect of not seeing anyone for a little while. However, this year definitely doesn't seem to be quite as bad. I try to lean into all the seasons. I do feel like they all have something to bring, and we can all learn something from it. But generally speaking, on a whole, if you take being lonely as a feeling that someone feels all the time, that's definitely not something I feel. I do need social interaction, as do my children, and they get more than I do. But I lean into the quieter months that bring a lot more solitude, and use that time to do all the things that I might not have time to when things are a little bit more socially busy. Like sewing. I'm often sewing up leggings. Don't know what it is, but leggings do not seem to hold their seam very well. So the majority of what I have to sew today are leggings. And I'll take that time to generally sit quietly and just sew. Just find it quite therapeutic to just sit in quiet and fix something. Yeah, might just be a hole in the leggings, but it gives me that time to reflect and think and really slow down. I think everybody feels lonely at one point or another, but I don't think it has to be a bad thing. I think it can be a really powerful thing to maybe embrace the solitude a little bit. I think a lot of people that can't physically get out and have their freedom to not be lonely is more difficult. So when we were snowed in for 8 days, I found that was a little bit isolating and lonely. I'm not used to spending 8 days not being able to leave the vicinity of where I live and can walk to. It's not something I'm used to. It's not something I like. I like, even if I don't want to do it, but I like the freedom that I can just get in the car and we can go somewhere. And when that, even with the snow that I adore, when that was happening, I thought, I've never really thought about this before. We've never been snowed in that long. But it made me think, well, why do I feel like that? And I think that's something we have to question ourselves. Like, sometimes we feel something and we dismiss it. We just say, you know. Whereas I like to think, well, why? Why do I feel like this? Is there something I can do about it? Is there a reason? Is there something behind it? And then I like to kind of face it head on. I don't really like to have things keep that hold over me, you know. And loneliness is one of the things that I don't allow to have that hold over me. If I feel lonely, I dig into why. And if it is genuinely just that I feel like I need a little bit more social interaction, like-minded people, then I'll go out and find that. There's no use me sitting on it. There's no use me going, oh, even just acknowledging that that's why I feel that way and doing nothing about it. I can't expect to raise my children to change things within their control that they're not happy with if I'm not going to do so as well. There's so much more to feeling lonely than having people around you physically. But do I feel like I feel more loneliness because of where I am geographically? Now that is something everyone asks me. And personally, I don't think loneliness has anything to do with geographical location. Yeah, I think people can feel lonely in a crowded room. People can feel lonely. People can feel lonely wherever they are. Sometimes the people that you least expect, those you believe have copious amounts of people in their lives, are actually those that feel deep inside like loneliness and the feeling of being alone. I think a lot of people that feel lonely feel like they've failed at something, failed at being social, or failed at being accepted. I often feel that it's more a case of being in between things, in between yourself, in between seasons, and in between life seasons especially. But it doesn't mean that anyone's failed at anything because they feel lonely. I think it's what you do with that feeling that's the most important. If you're in a quieter season that feels a little bit lonely, I hope this made you feel a little less alone. Thank you for spending a quiet few minutes here with me. Know that you are not alone.